Okay, so let's start off with the NLP training. So yesterday you all have seen the working of the knowledge graph engine and how we can train the knowledge graph engine for better FAQ identification. But for task identification, we have not trained any engine. So on our platform, there are two engines, that is the machine learning engine and the fundamental meaning engine that works towards intent identification. So till now you have seen that after I have configured the task, I have ensured that the utterance that I am putting or the input that I am putting has the words which are used in the task name. Okay, so I have either said I want to check my balance, or I need to open an account, I want to make payment, or just these words. So whatever it is, but I have ensured that these words are there. But of course, there should not be a restriction like this when you are building a chatbot. The chatbot should be able to handle any user input, identify your task correctly, and trigger the execution of that particular task. Okay, so for doing that, we need to train the machine learning engine and the fundamental meaning engine. Each of these engines have a different approach to task identification. The machine learning engine, it works with training utterances. So by that, what I mean is, now let's take into account the check balance task. Now, what are the different things or utterances that the user can use when he wants to perform that task? A simple utterance like, I want to check my balance. Or the user can say, what is the cash available in my account? Or what is the status of my account? Or how much money do I have in my account? Is there any cash in my account? So these are different kind of sentences that can come from an user when he wants to check the balance. And if we want to train the machine learning engine, we need to train the machine learning engine with all these types of training utterances. So whatever are the utterances that we think as developers we identify that users can use when they want to perform that task, we can train the machine learning engine with all those types of training utterances. When an input comes from the user, the machine learning engine is going to see how similar is the utterance of the user with the training utterances for a given task. And depending on the similarity, it will give a score. If the score falls within the threshold of possible match or definite match, in that case, that task will be qualified by the machine learning engine. So to train the machine learning engine, we have to provide training utterances. How do we do that? We come to the natural language section. Within the natural language section, we have something called the training. Click on training in order to start off with your training. The first section under training is machine learning utterances, and select the task over here and start providing your training utterances by one here. It's a good practice if you can beforehand create a collection of utterances like this, so that while training you don't have to sit and think, okay, what can be the next utterance. Okay, so you first decide on what can be the possible utterances which can come from the user when they want to perform the task. As a developer, we may not come up with a whole lot of utterances, and since machine learning engine learns by experience, it implies that the more the training utterances you put for each task, the better is the performance of the machine learning engine. On our platform, we say minimum 8 to 10 utterances should be there for each of the intents. But if you are depending on the machine learning engine for intent identification heavily, in that case, 8 to 10 utterances is very small amount to train the machine learning engine. You should be training it with hundreds of utterances, each of the intents with hundreds of utterances. But yeah, that's a big challenge. So that is why we have the other engine to support us in this case, that is a fundamental meaning engine. But it's a good practice if you can make a list of all the possible utterances and then train the machine learning engine with all those utterances for each of the tasks which are identified. Okay, so you can see over here I have some list of utterances like this. Now let's say I want to train the open account task. Okay, so I pick up the first utterance over here, and I select the task over here as open account, and I put in my utterance here. So open savings account. Okay, so you can see the utterance has been added to this particular task. Remember, when you are putting training utterances like this, within these utterances, if there are possible entity values, that is, for the open account task, if you remember, we have the first entity as account type, and that account type can be either savings or checking. Okay, so within that, so this particular word savings in the utterance, training utterance, is a value of that particular entity. Okay, so if you have possible entity values in the training utterance, it is always a good practice to highlight that particular word and tag it with the entity. So the moment you highlight it, the platform will come up with the list of entities that are configured for this particular task. Select the entity with which you want to tag that value. So savings has been tagged with the entity account type. So you can click over here and see what tagging has taken place. This is known as NER tagging, or named entity recognition tagging. And it helps ML engine to know that if a user's utterance matches with this training utterance, then these positions are reserved for entity values. Okay, so it helps ML engine in extracting entity values from the utterance of the user. There is no harm if you don't do this, but always it's a good practice if you can tag the entity values which are present in the ML utterances. So let's add a few more utterances like this. Okay, so once again, this utterance also has a possible entity value. So once again, I highlight this value and tag it with the respective entity. Okay. Um, Now, once you can keep on adding utterances like this, the more you provide utterance, the better is the training of the ML engine. Okay, once you have put all the utterances for a particular intent, you can change the intent from here and provide the training utterances for that particular intent. Okay, so something like this. Now, there are a few things that you should remember when you are training ML engine. That is, your utterances should be as varied as possible. That means, let's say today you have two utterances. I need to open a savings account. I need to open a checking account. I need to open a fixed deposit account. Okay, so you put three utterances like this for open account task: open savings account, open checking account, open fixed deposit account. This is not a good training because most of the part of the training utterance is same. You have just changed an entity value over there and created different utterances. So that is not a good way of training. It should, machine learning utterances should be as varied as possible so that it can cover all the possible utterances that can come from the user's end. The next thing that you should remember, the more the training utterance you put, the better is the training of the ML engine. The third thing, you have to provide a very balanced training. So that means if there are three intents in this particular bot, the number of utterances you're putting for each of these intents should be similar. So it should not be one of the intents is trained with, let's say, 50 utterances. The other intents are just trained with 2 or 3 utterances. So that is not a good ML training model that you have created. All the intents should be trained with an equal number of training utterances. So these are certain things you should keep in mind when you are training the ML engine. Okay, I'll just restrict it to 2 or 3. I'm not going in for too many. But as a developer, bot developer, you need to provide as many utterances as possible. Now, once you have given your training utterances, if there are entity values, you have highlighted them and tagged it with the respective entity of that particular intent, you need to click on the train button to trigger the training of the ML engine. Okay. Once ML engine is trained, after that, while talking to the bot, if the utterance of the user has words or is similar to the training utterances of any one of the tasks, you will see ML engine is going to identify that particular task and trigger the execution of that task. Okay, so something like this. Now let's say I put over here an utterance like, do I have enough money in my account to spend? Something like that. Okay. You will see it triggers the execution of the check balance task over here. If you go to NL analysis and come down, you will see there is the section for ML, that is ML engine, has got an training utterance for check balance, with the similarity between the utterance of the user and the training utterance. You can see the score over here. And if the score is more than 95%, that is, if it matches with the training utterance by more than 95%, in that case, it is taken as a definitive match. And can you all please go on mute? Okay, and once this is given as a definitive match, once any task is identified as a definitive match, that task, the execution of that task will be triggered by the NLP engine. Okay, so this way, once you provide the training utterances, whenever an utterance comes from the user, ML will check the similarity between the training utterance and the utterance which came from the user. Depending on the similarity, it will give a score. We have threshold configurations where we say 80 to 95% match is taken as a possible match. Okay, 90 to 95% and above is taken as a definite match. So in that way, depending on the similarity, it will give a score, and if it is a definite match, the task execution begins. If it is a possible match, in that case, it comes up with a did you mean. Okay, depending on the score, if it is towards the higher range, it will begin with the execution of the task. If it is towards the lower range of the possible match, it will come up with the dialog box, did you mean, followed by the name of the task. Okay, if you click on the task, it will start the execution of that particular task. Okay, so this way you can train the machine learning engine with multiple utterances for each of the tasks, and once you train it, machine learning engine will look for the similarity between the user utterance and the training utterance and identify tasks depending on the amount of similarity.